Namaste, Jai Bharat. Our nation is facing unprecedented disturbances from within. From within, the disturbances outside are there, which are very, very visible, including Bangladesh and the border, things like that. But they were there in some or the other form even before. But the inside disturbance is actually unprecedented. Perhaps there was no such time in the past that the opposition behaved so erratically, irrationally, and anti-nationally. Now, the situation is not very simple. The situation has its own seriousness. Therefore, how would we look at Bharat's unity, Bharat's nationalism, etc., need to be rethought and revisited. I have just one solution which comes to my mind right now, is that of none other than the youngest Maharishi in the Bharatiya Rishi Parampara, that is Maharishi Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo had come to Baroda and stayed here for more than 15 years. He stayed here. He taught in the then Baroda College, now the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. 15 years he taught here. He was with the Maharaja. He taught in this university, etc. And his whole idea of nationalism evolves during his stay in Baroda, in the today's named house where he stayed. We call it today's Sri Aurobindo Nivas in Dandiya Bazaar, Baroda. And there are a lot of Aurobindites in Baroda, old and new alike. See, he was moving into the concept of nationalism, etc. He already was a great nationalist right from the childhood. During his stay in England, that's why he pretended to say that I don't know horse ride to fail in the civil services examination, and then that's how he came back. The stories are known to them. He had edited two journals, Bande Mataram and Karma Yogi. Through these writings, he was showing how should a nationalist be, how should a nationalism, what kind of nationalism we require. Then, of course, we know that later he was arrested for sedition and was acquitted for lack of evidences. The stories are known to you. Then he talks about nationalism in Arya journal. And the two books which he writes, that's of on human cycle and the ideal of human unity. He speaks about something entirely unique. That is, he speaks about the human nation soul. Look, he speaks philosophy. He speaks of a nation soul, which suggests that the nation has a soul. This is not a simple concept. A nation has a soul, which should be a collective soul, obviously. And the idea of nation soul, Aurobindo gets from his understanding of the Veda-Upanishadic knowledge tradition and the Veda-Upanishadic epistemology of coexistence. The nation soul is a unifying principle. I often say that the unifying principle of Bharat is Bharatiya Sanskriti, which is correct. And Bharatiya Sanskriti is because there is a nation soul. Brilliantly, he puts it as nation soul. And it's there that we have to focus. What makes you a Bharatiya? At once you will find two things. One, Mulyam vai Bharatam, Nasyad Deshamatam. This is a saying from my teacher, Dr. Ashnaran of Lucknow, he says Bharat is not a geopolitical entity, it is a set of values. That's what uh, Professor Ashnaran used to say. Unfortunately, he's late, he's no more. Sri Aurobindo says the same thing. He says the European concept of nation is different. It's simply a geopolitical entity. But Bharat is a nation with a living soul. So he speaks about a nation soul. There's a difference in our perception that a geopolitical entity or a geographical area identified on the basis of language. This is how normally states are formed, but Bharat is a state, in a nation formed through the concept of nation soul, which of course is the result of the Bharatiya Sanskrit. This is an important thing. This has to be the concept of nation soul has to be imparted to the young generation, through which we can resist this kind of brilliant disturbances from without. One more point we have to remember, just one more point, that is, we know John Locke, Rousseau, etc., they have in their political philosophy thought about how a society is formed, formation of a society. They speak about, especially Locke, speaks about the social contract theory. The social contract theory says that individuals for coexistence comes into contract with one another, and when you get into a contract with other individuals, you have to surrender a certain amount of your so-called personal freedom of overaction. He doesn't mention overaction action that I am adding, because the freedom which is mentioned by these things is our freedom of overaction. So they have to surrender a certain amount of freedom. So everyone surrenders a certain amount of freedom to come into a kind of contract that of coexistence for everyone's betterment. This is the rough idea of the social contract theory, Rousseau or Locke or whosoever it is. But against this social contract theory, Pujaniya Guruji, Madhav Sadashiv Golwalkar, speaks an interesting thing. He says, Bharatiya society is not based on a contract. Bharatiya society is togetherness, is not contractual. He says it's based on the concept of Tyaga. Of course, he doesn't say Tyaktena Bhunjita, but he's speaking of Tyaga is based on the Upanishadic expression of Tyaktena Bhunjita, Tena Tyaktena Bhunjita. The Tyaga is a typical attitude of Hindu. I don't mean to say that other people are incapable of performing Tyaga, but for the Hindus, Tyaga becomes structural through a Sanskriti. Similarly, it should be structural through Bharatiya Sanskriti that we belong to the nation soul. And once we belong to the nation soul, no sorrows, no outside agencies, no whatever organizations, non-governmental, this thing, that thing, agencies, funding, destabilizing people will have any effect. So, for our nationalism, in the contemporary time, for now, we need to recreate Sri Aurobindo. We need to go and sit at the footsteps of Sri Aurobindo, sit at his feet and learn from him what is nation soul and what is nationalism. That would give us a lot of insight, and our insight will keep us together. Of course, we are together through a Sanskriti, but let us be a little more stronger through Sri Aurobindo's concept of nation soul. Let's keep trying it. I would suggest that people should read Aurobindo, though his English is slightly tough. He writes as he thinks, like many philosophers do. He writes as he thinks, continuously writing. But please, take a lot of articles he has written. A lot of things are published, and they are not expensive. They are actually relatively less costly, published by Sri Aurobindo Ashram. So Aurobindo's concept of Bharat Aurobindo's concept of nationalism, Aurobindo's concept of nation soul is what we need today, and he is a person of action, not sitting on a chair and speaking. He will act. That's why he was implicated in the Alipur bomb case. We'll meet again with some other thoughts. Till then, Namaste, Jai Bharat, Jai Sri Ram.